My dear listeners, this is an original sci-fi story I wrote for you. If you'd like to support me, just subscribe to the channel, it really helps the growth. The first time Sergeant Vanessa Hill left scraps outside the perimeter, she told herself it was laziness. She'd been eating a reconstituted protein brick, beef flavor allegedly, and the last third had gone gummy and cold. Instead of walking to the incinerator slot, she set the remainder on the flat rock just outside the fence line and went to bed. She didn't think about it again. There was too much else to think about. The listening post on Keth 7 was a single pressurized module bolted to a granite ridge, surrounded by motion sensor wire and a lot of silence. Its job was to log communications traffic from 3 feuding star systems and relay compressed packets to Fleet Command every 6 hours. It required 1 operator. Vanessa had volunteered. Her CO had looked at her for a long time before signing the transfer. She had looked back and said nothing. Before Keth 7. The Brecon Station evacuation. 18 crew under her command. 6 made it off before the docking seal blew. She didn't sleep much. She ran diagnostics she didn't need to run. She ate at her workstation and watched the data scroll and tried not to count. The scraps disappeared by morning. She left more the next night. Those disappeared too. On the 4th night, she sat by the window with the lights off and watched. They came at dusk. 3 of them, low to the ground, moving through the pale grass without sound. Carvin, her field guide, confirmed. Juveniles. Horned reptilians, native to the temperate belt, apex ambush hunters when fully grown. Currently the size of large dogs, all knobbed spine and oversized heads. They found the scraps. The largest, charcoal gray with rust-colored horn nubs, ate first. The other 2 waited. When he stepped back, the second ate. Then the third. Clean hierarchy. No fighting. When they finished, the gray one sat and looked directly at the window. The module's interior was dark. There was no way it could see her, but it sat and looked anyway, patient as stone, for a full 3 minutes. Then all 3 melted back into the grass without a sound. Vanessa sat in the dark for a long time after. She started leaving food every evening. She didn't approach them. Whatever this was, she didn't want to poison it with pressure. She put the scraps on the flat rock and retreated, and they came at dusk and ate, and sometimes she watched from the dark window and sometimes she didn't. By the 3rd week, she was sitting outside on the module's front step, inside the perimeter 10 meters from the rock. Far enough to seem incidental. She brought her notebook and pretended to write. The gray one, Flint in her head, paused when he saw her. He stared. She looked down at her notebook. He ate. The other 2 ate. Then all 3 sat in a row and stared at her. She kept writing. Entry 47, she said quietly. Dusk temperature dropping. Heard a long-range burst on the Virec frequency. Encrypted. Cubs are back. The middle one has a notch in her left horn that wasn't there last week. She paused. The number 6 is floating around in my chest the way it always does. I'm choosing not to name it tonight. The middle cub, Chip, flicked an ear at her voice. The 3rd one, pale gold with dark stripes, lay down in the grass. Sable. Vanessa kept talking. About signal data. About the ridge going amber at last light. About nothing. They didn't move. 3 pairs of amber eyes watching her. Steady and patient. Cataloging what was reliable. She understood suddenly and with some force that they had been running an experiment on her. She laughed, rough from disuse. Fair enough, she said. By the 2-month mark, Flint had stopped sitting at a distance. One evening Vanessa looked up from her notebook and found him a body length away, chin on his forearms, eyes half-lidded. She kept writing. I've been thinking about why animals trust the way they do. Not the mechanism, I know the mechanism. Proximity, food, repetition. I mean the decision. The part where something that evolved to be suspicious decides that this thing is safe. She paused. I think it's consistency. I think they watch to see whether you stay the same, whether you bolt when they get close. She looked at him. She hasn't bolted. Flint's tail moved once. Slow. The Carvin raiding party came on a night of heavy cloud cover. 6 adults, broad and scarred, moving in the kill configuration her field guide called Final Approach. Vanessa was asleep. She woke to 3 voices in sharp, rising overlap, a staccato bark and hiss that hit some frequency just below panic. She was on her feet before she was fully conscious, hand finding the sidearm by reflex. She got to the window. Flint was at the perimeter wire, facing outward, every spine raised. Chip and Sable flanked the module's sides. All 3 were making the alarm call, not retreating. She saw the adults in the grass a second later. 6 sets of reflecting eyes. What followed was not subtle. Vanessa triggered the perimeter strobes, blinding white pulses on an irregular rhythm. She broadcast a fleet deterrent tone on the low-range emitter. She swept the ridge spotlight in slow arcs across every ambush position she could identify. The 6 adults held for 40 seconds. Then they broke. Predators knew the difference between a target and a trap. Vanessa leaned against the wall inside, the sidearm still in her hand. Her hands were steady. She noted that the way she used to note instrument readings when her feelings were too large for the moment. She lowered the gun, went to the door, sat down on the step. Flint was still at the wire. He turned, walked toward her, and sat 1 meter away, shoulders slightly hunched, spine rough slowly flattening. His amber eyes were wide. Chip and Sable materialized from the module's flanks. They pressed close on either side of him. All 3 were trembling. 3 predator cubs who had just done the thing their entire biology was built against. Who had sided with an outsider over their own kind because of nothing more than protein bricks, quiet evenings, and a voice that kept showing up in the dark. "Thank you," Vanessa said. Her own voice surprised her. Came out whole. Not careful or monitored, just honest, open sound. Flint pressed his forehead against her knee. She put her hand on top of his head, between the horn nubs, and didn't move for a very long time. She stayed on Keth 7 for another full year. She filed her reports. She documented the signal's traffic. She watched something large building in the eastern systems and told Fleet Command exactly what she saw, in precise and useful language. In the margins of her notebooks she also documented everything else. The way Carven cubs signaled alarm versus play versus hunger. Flint's rough positions mapped almost perfectly to emotional states she recognized. Caution, satisfaction, irritation, comfort. She sent the documentation to 3 xenobiology departments. None of them could explain the imprint. Carven did not bond outside the bloodline. The literature was very clear. The literature, Vanessa wrote back, had apparently not accounted for consistency. When the rotation order finally came, she sat on the step one last time under a sky full of unfamiliar stars. 3 warm weights pressed against her sides. The deep subvocalization of Carven contentment moving through her ribs like a second heartbeat. She had come to Keth 7 carrying 12 names, 6 crew, 6 versions of herself she'd lost with them. She wasn't putting them down now, but they sat differently, less like stones on her sternum. She scratched Flint behind the left horn. He pushed into her hand with his eyes closed. She'd learned something, sitting in the dark on a ridge at the edge of someone else's war, talking to creatures who had no reason to trust her and had done it anyway. Showing up was everything. Being the same night after night, when the darkness was full of things that wanted you gone. That was the whole of it. That was how you earned the trust of something wild. That was how you started to earn back your own.